Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today I am bringing back a very special guest that I actually talked to the day before the election. He is a QAnon expert, and you might remember Jitarth Jadeja. I literally, just before we recorded this, watched him on CNN rock it out. So I think you guys are going to have a really good time with this. And Jitarth, thank you for coming on back.
No worries, man. And thank you for calling me special, but I'm not actually mentally disabled. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a little awkward now.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Well, the last time I talked to you was literally the day before the U.S. election, and I think we both know that that went smoothly, and absolutely nothing has happened since then. So this will be a pretty
Yeah,
quick conversation,
yeah, I know. What are we gonna talk about, man? I
right?
bought a new webcam. What do you think?
Right? It's good. You look good.
Thank
So,
you.
so with that, I actually do want to dive into QAnon and everything else. And the reason why I wanted to talk to you is because as I was basically looking on January 6th, when the Capitol building there was the riot and the breach and all of that, I thought back to our interview. And one of the things that you had mentioned is that essentially a lot of the QAnon adherents really didn't have to do anything because Donald Trump, then President Trump, was essentially handling it for them. So they could sit back and let him take care of the cabal and everything else that we talked about. Obviously, as we've been tracking after January 6th, the Capitol breach, and then now President Biden has been sworn in, we've kind of seen a bit of a meltdown and a bifurcation in the QAnon community. As I've been watching these, a lot of people are disillusioned, angry, digging in, whatever. They're running the gamut. So my question to you is, because I think there are very few people that can talk about this like you can, where does Q and QAnon go from here? You know, from what I understand, Q himself or herself or whatever hasn't actually posted anything in something like a month. So
Yeah.
what's going to happen?
Well, I mean, that's the $1 million question, right? Who knows? Anything could happen. I think if you want to talk about whether Q will return, I feel like it's a 50-50. He could, if he's smart, he won't. If he misses the spotlight, he will. However, given all the heat, considering that's going on at the moment after the Capitol riots, he might just call it quits and walk away. In regards to what's going to happen with the group, well, I kind of think that if you're looking at it as a bit of an online conspiracy cult, with Judgment Day elements. So essentially what happens in a kind of like end of days cult where there's supposed to be a pivotal moment where something happens, right? Judgment Day, whatever. That obviously that day never comes. And for Q, that day is the storm, right? The unsealing of indictments, the military martial law, military taking over, the followed by the arrests and military trials of civilians and public execution. So that's the storm. When the judgment day, when the doomsday doesn't come, the members of the cult, some of them, even a good chunk, even sometimes most, sort of filter away back to normal society and sort of get disillusioned and fall out of it. But then there is a certain segment of hardcore supporters who stay, and they're in it for the long haul. And they, in turn, start acting in a way that they think will bring about this doomsday. So I think that's a bit of a roadmap of what could potentially happen with Q. Now, Q is a little different because it's unlike any cult we've ever seen before. It's so
Right.
It's so ridiculous. It's so insipid and widespread that you can imagine it being a religion in 100 years, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think, another issue is that because it's about conspiracy theories, that even people who are falling away from conspiracy theories and people who are leaving Q, I've seen barely, maybe two, maybe three. Obviously, there'll be a little bit more, but barely any people sort of renouncing that the whole thing was a scam, right? The whole thing was a lie.
So you
Usually, they just think that it was a psyop or it was the cabal. They just add another level of conspiracy to it, and then in turn fall deeper down the rabbit hole. So,
So
yeah.
you think then, in that vein, you think that while we're seeing, let's say, people realize, this has been a lie, or I'm leaving this, you think the majority are going to stay and just be essentially more hardened into this by simply trying to push forward the apocalypse or the awakening or the storm or whatever that is?
I think even if 90 9% of QAnon followers stopped believing in it tomorrow, that 1% would pose a serious danger and would be a serious problem. I mean, think about how many Q followers there are, right? Let's say there's what, 100,000 at least in the United States alone. I'm sure there are probably millions around the world. So 1% of that, which is what, 1,000, right? 1,000 hardcore QAnon followers who believe that this is a battle between life and death and they need to bring about a situation of martial law. I mean, you only need to look back as far, just forget Iraq and Iran. I mean, that's the Middle East, right? Look at Northern Ireland. You can see how much damage sectarian violence can cause to even a Western civilization. Look at the Oklahoma City bombing. Imagine that a few times a year. Like, that's still seriously a problem.
Right. And I think that actually just that kind of dovetails with my next thought on this, is that let's say everybody sheds away and we have this very small, hardcore, group that wants to bring about this apocalypse. How do we even start identifying, which I think we probably could do, even though I would imagine they'd go more underground, more dark web, more private messaging. How do we deprogram these people? And I want to actually also ask you, on top of deprogramming, because you were in this, I mean, you at some point realized, hey, this is nuts. This is not for me. I'm done. Whatever that was. You got out early compared to, obviously, you didn't wait for the inauguration. What was your experience like in the aftermath of this entire thing? I mean, would you have, in terms of deprogramming, would you have any advice for deprogrammers? Would you have any advice for, let's say, the disillusioned Q followers that are going to leave, that 99% ideally?
I mean, I don't think I can tell like trained deprogrammers anything more than they already know. But to the disillusioned Q followers, I would just say, come back. Come back. It's okay. It's fine. I get it.
Come back to reality.
Like it's painful. It's painful to realize that you were this wrong. It's painful to realize you were this stupid. But it's not really anything to do with your intelligence. It doesn't really have anything to do with being right or wrong. I mean, who cares? Everyone's wrong, right? But you have to make a choice at this stage, and you have to take personal responsibility. You have to kind of admit that you messed up, right? And ask for forgiveness. You might not get it. Maybe you don't deserve it, right? Maybe none of us deserve it. However, you can find a way to forgive yourself, because that's the most important thing. And it's never too late, even if you do it 10 years from now, right? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
Right. And I think that makes sense. I know, and I think every human knows, it's hard to own your mistakes, especially when they're affecting everybody around you. And I saw a lot of people that thought, well, or that have been posting, I'm the laughing stock of my family now, and I've seen, or rather I should say the QAnon boards, message boards, have seen an explosion of people joining it since the inauguration, kind of to point fingers and, haha. And I don't think that's really helping anybody, especially when we want to bring these people back into the fold of just normal society or reality or whatever you want to call it. But that actually just brings up another thought for me as well, because the entire Q conspiracy, and I think you mentioned this really well in our last interview, it's essentially a catch-all for pretty much every conspiracy theory, from JFK Jr. being alive to, to aliens, to you name it, it's all there. So by virtue of that, I think these conspiracy theories will go back to being a la carte. So you may not believe the whole catch-all, but you might believe one or the other. But do you think that there are going to be some conspiracies here that simply just die? They just go away, and we're never really going to see them again. Or there's going to be that one guy waving the flag for JFK Jr. still being alive, or something along those lines.
Oh, that JFK Jr. being alive thing was pretty ridiculous. That kind of just got perpetuated because the people, like, they're like mini celebrities within the QAnon community. They rise and fall, and one of them, called Liz Crokin, particularly latched onto that. In terms of some parts of it, look, that's the thing, right? Yeah, it will, but it also won't. It depends on the person. It's really hard to build a model of QAnon beliefs. There's very little that these people have that are exactly the same thought patterns as the other. The only thing that really kind of stands like unites them all is this idea of the storm. And it's not really any different to how it's always been run. People are always, because Q just got so many posts, got like 4,000, right? That's a lot of posts. And the lengths at which these people will go to use proofs. Like you've seen that Always Sunny meme with Charlie in front of the board, right? And he's like looking like that. That's exactly what it's like, right? They'll look at like time frames and numbers and this and that and just sort of mash them all together. So it's always been like that. The concern I have is that this is the best time. This is the time to de-radicalize them, to bring them back into the fold. And there's not enough. There's nowhere near enough. With the end of Donald Trump's presidency, that's the only natural endpoint that exists because of this idea of martial law and arrests and whatnot. There's no other natural endpoint after this. There's nothing. Like, if Joe Biden leaves presidency, I saw a post on 8chan the other day, or 8kun, speculating that Joe Biden was part of the storm. Sorry, it's so ridiculous.
Wow.
But there's no, this is it, the end of Trump's presidency. And there's nowhere near as much movement as we need. And I don't know where we go from here, but it doesn't seem like anywhere good. Because like you said, people are kind of ridiculing them, which is fine. Like, I'm not saying don't ridicule them. They're definitely, and I definitely am deserving of ridicule, right? And they're very annoying, especially if you know them. They're very irritating, very morally superior, and they talk in a highly like, oh, I just know more than you tone, right? I totally get it. I was exactly the same way, if not worse. But at the end of the day, we have to give them some incentive to come back. Like, they would not treat you as nicely as I'm asking people to treat them if they were correct. I guarantee you that. I wouldn't have, right? But then that's the whole thing. It's like to err is to be human, but to forgive is divine.
Right. And I think that makes sense. It's, like I said, it's going to be an uphill battle, for everybody that's coming out of this, not to mention intelligence agencies, law enforcement, all of that are basically finding or trying to track and identify those very few that are still going to be digging in and really trying to push this forward.
They won't find them, Nick. This such a pointless exercise. It's such a pointless exercise. I don't understand. Like, there's too many of them, first of all. Secondly, like, has the US learned nothing from Iraq and Afghanistan going after domestic terrorists, with the stick and as fast and as hard as you can? Like, that it didn't work there. Why is it going to work here? Like,
right. No, I get that. Yeah, I get that.
All it's going to do is entrench them more. All it's going to do is create the idea of them as a persecuted group. Like, this whole banning thing. Should have done that 2 years ago. There was no point in doing it now, because now Twitter's given up any element of control of what they say. They still have to follow Twitter's rules. They couldn't organize violent stuff on Twitter. Now they can do it on Gab. They could, if Parler comes back, which it probably will, they can do it there. They can do it on the dark web. Now you have no idea and no control.
Right. Well, and I think that's part of it too, because you obviously don't want to make martyrs out of people, but you also have to do something, whether it's containment, a realization. We have intelligence that something's going to be actionable at X date. I mean, we obviously should be proactive because we don't want another Capitol riot situation. But you mentioned something, though, that I want to talk about real quick, and that's Parler. And the reason being is that I recently published an article, like literally it came out yesterday, on Parler's new content delivery network, or CDN. It's basically being run by a Russian shell company called DDoS Guard. They're also providing CDN services for a ton of QAnon sites. Even Hamas, is using them as well. And so
Hamas, really? Wow.
Yeah, Hamas. Yeah, Hamas is one of those. And so I'm curious to know what your thoughts basically on this Russian outfit, this Russian cutout, ensuring the security and uptime of both Parler and all of these QAnon sites. I mean, do you think that this is a kind of information that would dissuade future Parler and QAnon members from going to these sites, or maybe that we could convince them this is a Russian intelligence operation or a possible Russian intelligence operation? Because there's a lot of evidence that says it is possibly that. So what do you think?
I don't think it's a good idea to combat one conspiracy with another. Like, I think it's a bit like putting out one fire with another fire, right? I think that, yeah, I mean, that is, the fact that it's Russian doesn't surprise me, but all that kind of tells me is that for some reason this Russian hosting company seems to value free speech a little bit more than Twitter does, right? Which is ironic. I think there's been ever since Trump won the election, there's been this idea of a Russian boogeyman. And no one's saying that, Vladimir Putin is the Dalai Lama, but he's also not like, Satan. Russia doesn't care about the United States. Russia's not a threat. Compared to China, compared to the EU even, like, they're not, like, it's just, I just think it's ridiculous. Like, and there is a lot of evidence, but it's all circumstantial. And even then, let's assume this is right. So, and like how like no one's gonna believe, the QAnon people aren't gonna believe it. Even if Q came out and said who he was with proof, they wouldn't believe it. They, like you said about making a martyr, Ashley Babbitt, you'd think at least, like, even though she died for nothing, God rest her soul, but then they don't even believe she existed. Like, these people, there's no silver bullet here. There's no solution. Like, we don't have a playbook for this. We kind of just have to figure it out as we go, right?
Right.
So
right.
we can try a whole bunch of things. For sure, I'm not against deplatforming. Like, we deplatform for, other stuff, violent child porn. But yeah, like, I can understand deplatforming for this. But then you got to use the carrot and the stick, Like,
right.
If there's no carrot, then, like I said, what's the incentive for them to come back?
Right. I mean, and that's fair. I mean, I will say there is direct evidence, for example, in what I'm talking about, that that Russia is the CD, that a Russian outfit that basically is incorporated in Scotland is actually running that.
I'm sure you're right.
That's not circumstantial.
I'm sure you're right.
Right. Now,
right.
Right. Now, that doesn't necessarily point, and I also mentioned that in the article, that's not necessarily evidence that they're working for Russian intelligence, just being a Russian company, but there's a lot of Russian influence that has been proven over the years. And this situation where the most extreme elements of, in this case, US society are being essentially guaranteed uptime, would very much fit with their playbook, and that was my point.
But then it also fits with ours, dude. Let's not pretend.
Oh sure. Oh no. And I've talked about that. I've talked about that. The NSA.
I wish I hadn't read your article yet. I wish I saw the video. I got to read your article.
Yeah.
I think this is I think it's a really good point, right? And I think it's something that, if it turns out to be true, hell, dude, it's worth going to Russia and saying, hey, listen, we'll pull back on a few of our psyops if you pull back on yours, right?
Right.
Maybe we'll let you build that pipeline through Libya, right?
Right.
Like something like that.
Right. Well, so both Russia and China refused to sign the anti-hacking treaty by the United Nations. 27 countries are in that, and the United States is in that. But so there you go. But
Australia signed the UN Treaty for Human Rights, on the Treaty of Human Rights. It then declared the entire of the country an exclusion zone, so it could keep children in indefinite detention. UN treaties don't mean anything.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. So with that,
I love you, Nick. You know that I do.
No, I know, it's all good. No, hey, we can disagree. That's totally fine. All I'm looking for is very interesting discussion.
Yeah.
And you've got knowledge that I clearly don't have in the inner workings of Q and all of that, which I think is your expertise at this point.
Yeah,
you probably put that on a resume.
Probably not. But like, look, I could be wrong, dude. Put it this way, it wouldn't be the first time.
It's all good. It's all good. So with that, I want to thank you for your time, because I think this is an ever evolving situation. And,
Yeah.
When we are talking about social media and deplatforming and, essentially, let's say, losing a grip on reality. And I think that the internet is accelerating this. If you saw, I did an interview a while back with one of the leaders of the Flat Earth movement that wouldn't exist if it hadn't been for the internet at this point, because everybody around them in real life is like, come on, really? Flat Earth? But you get online, you get with people that are like, no, keep the faith, keep going. And it tends to grow. It tends to snowball, because now you found a community that is reinforcing something that is purely illogical. And I think Q is a massive explosion of that. And so, what are you going to do?
Dude, and like, this is the worst thing I hate about this, is that it's like, first of all, Flat Earth, it's like, to what end? Like, what do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, and okay, there's a conspiracy for Flat Earth. So, okay, why?
Right. Well, I think the point is that if you can be lied on something that momentous, everything else can be a lie too. And so that's my speculation. But I'm not a flat earther.
I'm actually agreeing with you, right? It's like a statement about the human condition.
Right.
I just wish that we could go back to real fun conspiracies like Bigfoot and UFOs. Like, remember the CIA released a bunch of UFO documents and stupid QAnon.
Right. And we know, for the record, UFOs are not a conspiracy. They're not.
They released a document. It's like, that's not a conspiracy anymore. That's crazy.
Right. Well, Jitarth, as always, man, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And as always, I think my audience does too. Banter aside, I think you always deliver really interesting information on such an important topic. And if my audience wants to follow you or get more information, how would you like to be found on social media or elsewhere?
You can. I feel like such a tool saying this, but you can follow me on @Jitarth Jadeja on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. Don't add me. I'm not going to add you. But Twitter's fine.
All right, right on. Well, thank you again, Jitarth. Excuse me. I really appreciate it.
Enough.
No, all good. All good. I just tripped on my own tongue there. But thank you very much, and it was a pleasure. Thank you.
See you later, Nick.
Take care.